Good morning, Ryan.
Hey, everybody.
Good morning. How are you?
It's going to take us a little bit to get used to because we've got two big screens here, one of which is sort of the Zoom screen and the other one of which is the presenter screen, I guess. And hopefully, curious whether you folks who are joining via Zoom, you see those of us in the room? Can you hear us all right? Yeah? Okay, terrific. So this is the Institutional Infrastructure Committee meeting, and we are going to get started. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here in a variety of forms. Hopefully next time we can be all in person. And we are going live in Zoom and over YouTube. We'll be presenting and participating both by phone and via Zoom. So we do have some folks who may be by phone at some point. We are now going to cover 4 information items. And we're going to start with Stacy Pearson and Olivia Yang on the Agriculture Research Service, Washington State University Plant Biosciences Building.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead and get started. Here on the campus, we will be wearing a mask. So if you can't hear me, I'm going to try to speak loudly and clearly. But if you can't hear me, please let me know.
So Stacy, I think you're allowed to take yours off when you're
I am?
When you're speaking.
Okay.
When you're speaking.
So we're supposed to remember to switch back and forth.
Okay, great. Well, this first information item is, first of all, excellent news because we've received federal funding from USDA of approximately $105 million for our new building. And there's 5 USDA research units that are located in this building as indicated in your agenda. And this plant biosciences building will foster and enhance that connectedness. The reason this is an information item is we do anticipate, because even though the project cost is covered, we do anticipate that future cost of ground lease could be in excess of $5 million. And so we want to bring the information item now so that you're aware of that, and that at some point that could come back for an action item. On attachment A in your folder, you will see the site locations. We have our master plan site, the current location of Johnson Hall, and then an alternate site all within that complex. I think the great news there is that we have received the funding for the demolition of Johnson Hall so that this new building can be placed there. And as we talk to you about our capital project plan, this is excellent news as it will help us deal with that very large deferred maintenance number that we have by taking down this aged, costly facility and replace it with this new facility. And in addition, we'll be able to transfer our maintenance and operation budget to that building, so we won't have to gather new funds. So very excited about that. Obviously excited to get the funding, but also that we're able to initiate this plan to help us on our deferred maintenance issues. So, Olivia, is there anything else that you would like to say about the facility?
Yes, the only thing as a corollary to the real estate transaction is that normally a project that's 105 million would come to the Regents, but it is actually funded by the U.S. Congress to USDA, and our role is merely to be the on-site reps for ARS, and so it's actually a service agreement that we have with them. We're not managing the project itself. The U.S. Corps of Engineers Seattle office is managing the project. I would add that.
And just so I understand, so we're actually getting paid for the land lease, but the $5 million that you referenced over the term of the, I guess, service agreement, maybe it's not.
Well, other expenses, operations,
Okay.
and maintenance over, it's a 20-year term, a proposed 20-year term.
So kind of our ongoing operational cost, we're estimating will be over the $5 million.
Yes.
Yeah. But there's cash flow going both ways.
Correct.
Yeah.
So in other words, it could be years before you see an action item on this, but it's such good news to get this kind of
Yeah,
funding as well.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Great. Is that service agreement worked out and all of the ins and outs of that done at this time?
Not quite. I believe we still have some work to do, some more steps to go through. Because right now it's a request.
Okay.
Stacy?
Yeah.
You know, one thing I would add on this too is I appreciate the work Colleen and Chris Mulick did with the legislature, taking forward something that isn't a multi-year request. And I think we got several of those funded this year that Olivia and her team have been talking about needing for a long time. It's great to do the new buildings. We sometimes need stuff for renovation, work with deferred maintenance, but this has really been a multi-year effort, first to get the feds to agree to fund the building. And then second, for the state, it's a great investment. Man, $8 million and you get a new $105 million state-of-the-art research building on one of our campuses to support Washington agriculture.
Yeah.
It's a real win, but it also shows that we've got to keep working the federal side hard because, you know, people could go, you'll never get a building. Well, we got one. So
Yeah.
we just got to keep at it. So
I think it was a great partnership. You know, for everybody to come together like that and to get the building and then to be able to put it in a location that was very central to the research.
Great. Well, if there are no further comments on that item, I think we will celebrate and move on to item number 2, which is the real estate update. And this is something that I am super excited about. We have started doing this, and I think we'll be doing it on a regular basis and also in a more fashion as we get our arms around it. But I think this is a really interesting topic for this committee, just to understand what are our holdings, how are we managing those? It is a major asset of the university. And Stacy has done a great job of getting us up to speed. So both Stacy Pearson and Ryan Goodell will be presenting this portion of the information items.
Great, thank you. Yes, our intent here, and I think this is a great start, is to give the Regents some background information on our real estate holdings, as well as in this committee in the future, we're going to do a little bit deeper dive into the facilities operations so that you can gain some familiarity, not only with, you know, what our current structures are, but some of our plans, and then hopefully engage in discussions about, you know, what about this, what about that, what should we do in the future. So we'll go ahead and get started on this with this beautiful picture of the Palouse. Okay, now my screen isn't going down, but there we go. So I think it's important for the Board of Regents to know that we do have a real estate policy, a Regents policy, that the Regents have the power and authority to acquire, dispose, manage properties on behalf of the university. And there's a delegated authority to the president and myself regarding matters of real estate. All real estate is owned by the university, not by separate in administrative units. And it applies to all land, buildings, air rights, water rights, timber rights, and mineral rights. And so in my experience over the last couple of years is there have been many occasions where there's a gift, but it will say that when we can dispose of the land asset, where those proceeds will go. And in the event that it doesn't have that designation, then it goes into our real estate account. And so we've had an opportunity to exercise that on multiple occasions. And then lease income and proceeds from sale of university property are deposited in that real estate account and offset the overhead costs of real estate operations. So we do actually charge a fee when we do a real estate transaction, and that helps fund the operations of the real estate office. So here's our system-wide real estate overview. Most of this you're familiar with. I love this map because it shows kind of the presence all over the state, and especially when you add in the extensions. And it gives you some data on where these are located, how many owned leased buildings, the gross square footage, rooms, floor plans. And invite you to, if there's additional information about these facilities, or if in the future you desire a deep dive into any of those areas. I think it's also would be a good time in this committee maybe to start looking at the campus master plans, because each campus does do a master plan. And especially in light of doing our strategic plan, those are good, kind of marrying your strategic plan with your master plan with your budget process. So
Just a question, for our extension presence in every county, we don't necessarily have a physical presence in terms of something that we own or lease, right?
for every single county,
Yeah.
is that the question? I'm actually not sure. Is there a county that we don't have?
I believe we have physically people in every single county.
But not necessarily real estate.
Not, oh, real estate.
Yeah, okay. And so, yeah.
I don't know, Heather, I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
There may be also by agreement, because a lot of those are combined with the county offices, so it probably varies. I mean, that's a very good.
It's like
answer, but-
extension, you know, everything is a little different every
Yeah,
county.
right.
That's a great question, though. Let us check on that, because I think that's important. I know.
So
a couple
leased
of-
or owned facilities.
Yes.
Yeah, and just understanding kind of, I'm fascinated by extension, as you guys know. I'm always wanting to know more about it, but just be curious kind of what the typical, and maybe there isn't a typical, but what's the range of arrangements, maybe, I guess? And so what does that look like? Because part of what I'm wondering is, you know, are there opportunities to use that physical space to do more in the community than what the traditional extension activities are? And particularly now that we've got, you know, some major dollars going into broadband and that kind of thing in rural communities, whether there would be, you know, something that, because we have that in our charter, of course, is the infrastructure beyond physical infrastructure, but also technology infrastructure, whether understanding extension a little bit more in terms of how it physically exists now could be helpful in understanding the technology angles there.
Yeah, I think that actually would be a good presentation in the future. And I know a couple that I have visited are, they share the facility with other operations, community operations.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you know that we did use our extension locations to provide wireless
Right.
to our students and other people in the community
Yeah,
during.
whoever needed to circle around. Yeah, which was great.
Really emphasizing the need for broadband also. Ryan, do you have anything to say about that, about the extension locations?
No, I think that's a great question, and definitely look into it further. I will say, like President Schultz says, we have physical presence in each county, and sometimes that isn't necessarily through a lease or owned property. Sometimes it's a master gardener agreement or interagency agreement. So we do have that physical presence, but definitely something to look into more, I think. That's a good question.
Great. And then this shows the statewide real estate locations, and those include leases, correct, Ryan? On this slide.
Yes, that includes every location throughout the state. So each dot represents a location. So like Pullman campus is one dot. It doesn't necessarily represent the size of the location. Yes.
And then we also have out-of-state holdings, 9 locations, and clear over as far away as Washington, D.C., which of course is our office, our leased office space in D.C. And Chicago. Yes, and Brian, remind me what is near Chicago. We talked about that, and I.
That is the Shock Physics ASL office.
And then, of course, internationally, in Ecuador, the Connors Crop and Soil Sciences, leasing land for barley and quinoa research, Afghanistan, International Research and Agricultural Development, leasing residence for its researches, and Rwanda for crop and soil sciences. So I don't know if that's new information to anyone, but it was to me as we did this research.
Yeah.
And then our system-wide, you know, we're in the midst of discussing our system roles, our system versus campus role. So this is a perfect example of a system-wide role and managing our both acquisitions and dispositions of real estate, our lease agreements, facilities use agreements for both WSU and non-WSU facilities, and license agreements. And in the course of doing this, we have definitely identified things that have come along for which we either didn't have a proper lease agreement or we weren't monitoring that. And I have to praise Ryan for really kind of ferreting those out and helping us get lease agreements and collect rent on lease agreements, as well as taking a look at our space and saying, hey, is this the best use of our dollar? And of course, one of those, and it's on this list, is the Seattle office, is, both the type and size of the space. And of course, the COVID situation has really emphasized, that how we utilize that space. And so we do not plan to renew that lease going forward. And we're looking at what is better for our Seattle presence. And there's a myriad of entities that operate out of that office, so they can answer that, as they do their own research, for everything from the Murrow College has people there, Advancement has people there, and, where is the better location? So that's a discussion that we've been having and looking at our alternatives. And then, of course, easements and rights of access, that's very important.
Stacy, one quick question on Seattle. So is the thought then that each group that is currently using the Seattle office would make their own independent decision about about what space they want, or would the idea be that we would be thinking, what should we have in Seattle, and then offering, if co-location of those various functions makes sense, including whatever functions might come or go, because I'm not prejudging that.
Yes.
Would we be making a decision whether it would make sense to co-locate those?
Yeah, I think it's more the latter. That's the discussion we want to have, is our presence in Seattle and what should it be and who should be there. I will say, though, some of those offices, they can make other decisions. Like, I know there's one, and I can't remember, there was at least one staff person who said it was actually more convenient for them to be on the Everett campus, if that were a possibility,
Right.
than to come into Seattle. Or if it's a co-location with some of the extensions in the area, that was also another discussion. But I think it's really around the strategy of what we want our Seattle presence to be, and then finding that appropriate space.
Right. Okay.
And that this might not be the right space where we are currently.
Not to get too far in the weeds, but how much square footage for a Seattle space? What is it that we occupy? And how many people do we have?
Ryan, do you remember that floor plate
It
size?
is, yeah, it's about 14,000 square feet.
Yes, and number of people there, have we taken a full inventory of that? I know a lot of the advancement staff were there, and then Ruckles House is located, Washington Academy of Sciences is there.
Yeah, we've got about, it varies from time to time, but in general, about 45 people are in the office. And it's, particularly like the foundation, they're kind of in and out in the office part-time. So it's a relatively large space for the number of people we have there, I would say.
For the number of people. And we did start, hoteling so that people could, whoever came to Seattle could come and utilize the space. We've used it for some conferences and things, but I would call it an underutilized space at this point in time.
Yeah, I've been there a couple of times, and it definitely doesn't have the energy you would like it to have. And a lot of people that do use it for their, office are out and about a lot, so they're not, they're present. Yeah.
I think, Heather, that's a great point. I mean, I've been there a bunch of times, right, as president, and largely when I'm out visiting with donors or prospective donors, Regents, whatever, you're out of the office, you're meeting at the local Starbucks. And I think there was an envisioning when I got here that we would bring a lot more people to that office. And we found the practical side was we went out to folks like we should. And I would be in favor of a pretty significant hoteling kind of option. So almost like a WeWork, right? If I need 3 hours worth of time in a quiet space, I can sign up to get that. But you don't have an office space for the president, to be there once a month. those are the kinds of things that I think Stacy and Ryan are really looking at utilization and what do we need? And actually now with people with more flexible work schedules, it's probably even accelerated even more that there's lots of alternatives that could be used, particularly in a high expensive area.
True. Okay. And then also, as I mentioned before, management and disposition of real property that comes through the WSU Foundation, gifts of property, and then when in accordance with the gift agreement, we can sell it, and the proceeds might be dedicated to vet med or another operation. Otherwise, it goes into our coffers. And well, all of the land really from the foundation, I think, have mostly been dedicated. Although that, Ryan, have we had any that didn't go to a specific unit that were?
Just one or two in my experience, and those came to our office, but yes.
And this is a foundation question, but, which I should ask there, but, we don't allow people to give us land that we can't sell, right?
I cannot confirm that hasn't been done in the past, but we do have policies now about, in fact, we're talking about one now that the gift would go through, be vetted by our office to determine what those impacts might be.
We want that thing. Yeah.
Well, and around the country, one trend, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, we can kind of discuss this over dinner or something, is that more foundations at land grant universities are keeping land, because if you look at the return on investment, it can be pretty good as part of a diversified portfolio. And when I was at my previous job, that was the policy. You got land, you immediately put it on the market and sold it. And we had people like Ryan and the real estate folks saying, sometimes that makes perfect sense. Sometimes you're better off holding it for a couple of years because then you can actually do better on investments if you want to do that. So have a strategy, not just simply a policy, is really what it was. And I think we want to do the same sort of thing. It's just to make sure that somebody doesn't go, wow, that's downtown Seattle. Maybe you ought to hold that for a couple of years. Or if it's somewhere else, you say, okay, there's a buyer that's interested. Let's turn it to cash immediately, type of thing. So, but we can talk about that because I think it's important as we look at how we invest the foundation dollars to be creative, but it can't be somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. I mean, it's got to be a professional person who understands the real estate area to help with that.
Yeah. No, and I would part of the process. And also, I think, the important thing is not that you have a policy that you sell instantly, but that you don't get something that you are required to keep it and maintain it. And
Right, exactly.
Where it's the white elephant, that you can't ever get rid of. That's sometimes people, they believe that they have this piece of property that is of key use to the university, but that may not be true forever.
That's right.
We can think of some concrete examples.
Yes,
of
I
that.
was going to.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, and just the due diligence around property, for environmental and all of that. So Ryan put together a year in review on our system-wide real estate examples, and it really covers a lot of different areas. In Connor's, relocation of an extension office and several leases, as I indicated. The good news here is entities all over have started coming to our real estate office and saying, hey, could you help us? We need to do a lease extension or do something like that. There's a lot less, I hope, a lot less of those do it on our own. So this has been an extreme improvement. In Everett, we are helping, we're utilizing one of our Seattle staff members to help with property management and facility management role. And that's kind of where we said, well, it doesn't probably require, a full individual. So how can we share resources to help get those things done? And we'll look at doing more of that. And then, of course, about or have heard about our negotiations and due diligence on the proposed acquisition of the Everett Housing Authority property, for which we received $10 million from the state, in which we will be able to repurpose to purchase some strategic land for the Everett campus.
Casey,
Yes.
I just got a quick text from one of the people listening that they were having a hard time hearing us. So
Okay.
they said to speak more loudly. So could maybe somebody who is on the screen there give us a thumbs up? Can you hear us okay? Okay.
Stacy's the one who's hard to hear. So Stacy, you might want to project a little bit more.
Okay, I will. They had actually originally asked me to sit in the middle of the room where the speakers were, but then it would have been back there. So anyway, I'll try. Let me know if I just keep reminding me.
Mary Jo, can you hear Stacy better now?
Yes, Stacy, be great.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so a few more on this slide. Pullman, so we did just recently rebid the restaurant for the golf course, and very excited to have a local community restaurant that came up there. And of course, they opened just as COVID hit, but they're still, we're looking forward to that opening more fully. We have a research and tech park in Pullman, and then I'll just go through these, some easements. In the Seattle area, we did sell some lots in Tacoma, Bonnie Lake, and the President's condo in downtown Seattle. And then I've already talked about the Seattle office. So,
And we did sell that condo?
we did sell that condo. Yes, there's a report on that a little bit later. Oops, I'll make sure. Oh yeah, so this is just going on what we did in Spokane, termination of our former MOU with Eastern Washington, our innovation building, the STHC building, Tri-Cities. We did some ground leases. You'll remember the Richland School District that took a while because it kept evolving into a different form of land agreement. As it says in here, it was started as a lease, then became a swap, and eventually a sale. And then Vancouver, the Lodge development, road vacation, new license agreement with Verizon, and then the relocation of the Washington, D.C. offices. So just an example of a lot of the activities just for the last year. And then foundation, the Heart Tree Farm. This was interesting, gift to the university and to Brown University. So an undivided 50% interest, and then the Vetter Farm.
And that tree farm, is that a revenue generating farm?
That's a good question. Ryan, on the Heart Tree Farm?
No, it's not. It was kind of a family-held property, and the gentleman just left it to WSU and Brown, of course, but it does not generate income, no. That would be the one with the intent just to sell it. Yeah.
Make it into like a Christmas tree farm. Right? When you see tree farm, or at least on this side of the state, that's what you think of.
Yeah, exactly. And then Yakima, the relocation of the College of Nursing to the PNWU campus. That was with the new lease agreement and a cooperative agreement, and then non-real estate agreements. So there was some interesting things that come our way. Artwork purchase and sale agreement to acquire the Cougar Pride sculptures at the campuses. Sponsorship agreement for the new GISA Credit Union sponsor, and then the 5G license agreement with Verizon. So again, a lot of really interesting things that have come our way.
What's the 5G license agreement?
This is the one in Pullman, correct, Ryan?
It is Pullman, but it's also, we converted it to a system-wide. So when Verizon's ready to expand to the other campuses, the vehicle's already in place for them to do so.
Here's a sense of kind of the dollar volume that we have with system-wide contracts, the acquisitions, rents collected, savings achieved. This is what Ryan submits on his annual report to me as we kind of look at progress. And so I think this is a great metric to look at, and that we can look at in the future and see how we're doing, and maybe use that information to help us establish those longer-term strategies.
Yeah, so it'd be good to see this graphically over time in the future, just so we can kind of understand what the flow is.
Mm-hmm. And data. Great. And so talking about our goals for the coming year, certainly continue with the disposition of non-mission critical and or high-risk properties. That's something that we've really taken on, had a lot of discussions about, because, we've just had some experiences, and so then we say, well, now why again? do we have this property and how is it meeting that mission? And I think this is going to play a big role as we establish our One WSU strategic plan. And you'll hear about that here shortly. We've got a couple of properties in Pullman that we're talking about. Complete the implementation of a new property management system, which will just, it's going to help us with the data and being able to manage both the properties as well as update the information on these and provide more timely data. Update our policies and procedures for execution of contracts and provide guidelines. So that's something that's just really needed and really helpful, is a process for when you need to seek some property. Don't go out and negotiate your own lease agreement. You go to the real estate office, and that way we can do a better job at some of these things. So been doing that and finalize and implement the remote work pilot project. So we have 3 entities in a separate building, the McCluskey building. And in fact, we just moved our environmental health and safety group in there, and they're piloting a remote work process and strategy where there's hoteling and what are the terms for when you can have your own office or not have your own office. And so we're going to watch that this year and see how it works. It's not necessarily a customer facing building, that we use there. So we want to really see, the group has been very enthusiastic. Plus there's a lot of different operations, people who easily work remotely, contract administration, and others who have a lot of on-campus duties. And so both Ryan and I served on a task force. I guess it was a task force that was chaired by Senator Sam Hunt about what can we learn from COVID in terms of remote work and all of that. So we're using this facility to do some pilot work and gather the results and present those.
So the outcome of that would then potentially have implications sort of system-wide for perhaps making our facilities usage different.
Yes, the focus is how we use our facilities, how can we better utilize those, and if since we have started a couple of projects where we quote use the hoteling space to say, hey, if you are in the office part of the time, or we have people coming from other campuses a lot, and they, that they have a space that they can go to, and that we free up some space, maybe create, some extra space for another activity. And so like in this case, we actually moved another department into the building saying, even though the building was full, we think that we can accommodate this if we utilize these methods. And I know Olivia's on the screen, really, really want to engage in space utilization. And this is a good opportunity, how we use our space, how we can better utilize it to avoid having to maybe build more, particularly administrative space.
Right.
Maybe not so much on the, on the research and academic side, although that is something that is, being discussed and considered, but certainly on the administrative side. At a prior institution that I was at, we found a way that if, just by using document imaging and removing file cabinets, how much additional square footage that we gained, that could translate into either office space or
you
shared
think about
workspace.
Costs of maintenance, you think about environmental footprint, not only of the facility itself, but the commute of the staff that, don't actually need to commute every day. There's a lot there. Yeah.
Yeah, we think there is, but we also recognize just maybe you have to ease into this and you have to test a few things and see how it works. So hence the pilot, but we're excited about that.
Stacy?
Yes.
Just one comment. For our Regents, I don't think Stacy gets enough credit for the work that they're doing in this particular area. Truly, when she got here, a lot of this was simply a free-for-all. We had people negotiating leases all over the place. With Ryan coming in, we now have processes. We've got a centralized office, so every campus does not have their own real estate operation. A lot of the hoteling work that Stacy and her team are pioneering. Everybody sees the big financials, but the way you run your stuff internally, though, is a great example across the system. So I just want to make sure to acknowledge you write all that stuff down. This has been a long set of work, and it's really a model for a lot of the other groups to follow. So just Stacy.
Oh, thank you. And thanks to Ryan for doing that. I think his first few months, I said, I need an inventory.
Yeah.
I need to know what we have. And I think that was,
Arms around that.
yeah,
right?
getting
Yeah.
the starting point and frankly, finding a few surprises along the way, you know, or that we didn't quite have this, where did this come from? So I think it's been very helpful, but it's also the right thing to do, because I think that there's a lot of opportunity here, both in how we utilize our land and our space, but what we have and if it's key to our mission.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is a good time for me to insert what I hope will be a topic when we next talk about these issues, or maybe at our next meeting. But I'm not sure if I think people who are remote have this, but I asked that we take a look at our committee charter, and would love for the regents who are part of this committee to take a look at this offline, and maybe we can get an email thread going amongst us about this and ideas for future agenda items, because we really have a very strategic charter, and this piece of it, and I'll be really interested, particularly in John Shetler's comments as he gets his arms around it, but this piece of it, and then also the technology infrastructure piece of it, we could be doing more, I think, as a committee, to be strategic in how we're thinking about role, and giving Stacy and team more guidance on what we would like to try to tackle in the committee. So I don't have answers, but I do think it's right for some thinking on our part.
Excuse me, team. This is John Schuttler. I raised my hand, but I don't know that anybody saw that. Stacy and Ryan, thank you. That was a great presentation and opportunity for me to kind of wrap my arms around the real estate holdings as a new regent. I'm curious about the tools that you might have in place that are databases to be able to put together and show the entire portfolio. It may show lease versus owned, total cost, operating expenses by square footage, lease expiration dates, cost of leases. Just what kind of tools do you use to be able to take a look at the overall portfolio in its entirety, to be able to help make some assessments and just understand exactly what you have under management?
So Ryan, would you say we have all of those items in our new property management system?
Yeah, so we're getting there. In the past, we haven't had a property management system. So if you wanted that information, you would have to go in, piece by piece and put it all together. We acquired Yardi. I don't know if you're familiar with Yardi. So that is it's being implemented right now. We have one final piece. Long-term, it will be fully integrated with Workday, which would be fantastic. In the end, we probably won't be able to get to that full integration until everything kind of settles. But so for the interim, we're trying to transfer data via ETL files, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So the short answer is, within the next few months, I hope to be able to have all that information at our fingertips that we could produce very quickly.
Great. I look forward to being able to review that with you guys sometime. That'd be great.
Thank you.
I can geek out on that.
Yeah. Yes, we would look
So
forward
can
to
I.
that also.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. And I did, there is an appendices to that presentation that identifies acreage, facilities, and gross square footage of each campus that you can see in your packet.
Great. Thank you.
Might be interesting also to look at output of each facility, how you would measure output. In our case, I think is maybe a little bit more confusing, but number of occupants would be one, research grants achieved would be another one, degrees awarded could be one, dollars flowing through, like in the case of the extensions. I think the extensions are revenue generating, I believe. in most cases. Anyway, it would just be interesting to think about how would you measure productivity of space. I don't know what the right metric is, but maybe John can think about that too with you guys.
Yeah, and there are definitely some higher education publications on those types of metrics. And so identifying what would be most useful to us and getting a start on the right type of data, and then we can build that database out as we gain familiarity. But yeah, it does, that's where the term flexible research space came, is it was identifying kind of underutilized research space. So if you built it in a flexible manner so the benches could be moved and things,
Right.
and then make the requirement that you have a grant in order to have a research space, it could, do kind of encourage activities like that by measuring.
Right, very interesting.
And having an outcomes-based approach. There's a lot of opportunity there, I do agree.
Okay, so that is the end of that presentation. So how often are we going to do that kind of deep dive, Stacey?
I think-
Annually or?
Yeah, I think that's really up to us in terms of if we'd identify how many meetings we have and how many areas this committee would like to delve into. We also have a deep dive into the facilities, our current facilities operations planned. We didn't do it at this meeting because of the time limit, but it's scheduled for September. And then other operations, certainly. I think your idea about the extensions presentation is a great
I
one.
would like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll get an email thread going about potential agenda items that you will be included on, and just feel free to bring them in there. What I would like to do is just kind of do some ideation so that we can figure out what's sort of the highest order fit, and then of course build it into an annual cadence or a biannual cadence or whatever makes sense. But
Sure.
I think there's an opportunity to go deeper on a lot of topics, and we've got in our charter, we have sustainability, we've got technology, we've got security, and then we've got, the built environment. So there's just a ton there, and figuring out what's the highest priority to give you the input and guidance that you need would be really interesting.
Sure, and I'm sure we can quickly come up with what we could do for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
The regular regions meeting on those topics alone.
No shortage
Yeah.
of topics. Yeah. So I think let's generate them all and then we'll prioritize them. Okay, cool. All right. So the next three items, two of them are information, and the last one is action item, are all very much tactical implementation items as opposed to this larger strategic discussion. But a lot of them very clearly flow out of what I can tell as your sort of emerging strategy for real estate management. And so let's go ahead and cover items 3 and 4 of the information items. And you might just draw the connection with how this is in accordance with the strategy of making sure that we are having the right assets and minimizing risk and being attentive to what's in the best interest of the university and students.
Yes. And I think this Adams Mall property is really a perfect example of that. So it wasn't just looking at those attributes, but it was also what is our goal in Pullman itself. And there was a past decision that we needed to expand into the College Hill neighborhood. And I think probably others could speak to this better than I, but what I gather from it, it was, just to show our connection with the community. And in the case of this property, it has actually created some liability for the university in the past. There is no longer there now, but there was a Stubblefields bar, and there were some incidents there. In addition, and importantly, the property is subject to a long-term commercial lease with Corporate Point developers, under which the university receives about 10% of gross revenues generated from the property. So it really provides minimal income, but also a lot of risk, and we don't have a lot of control over what actually goes into the facility. So this has been lengthy discussion, I think, since I came. I mean, a lot of the real estate things that came up when I first came, including the WSU connection stores and things. Some of those we could act on pretty quickly. You could just look at the income statement and say, maybe this isn't the best use of this, but get out of a lease and all of that. This one it's right across from the campus and all of that, but
Adams Mall it's in the heart of the Greeks.
Greeks, yes, on College Hill.
Shakers, or I don't know what that is anymore, but.
Yeah, it was Stubblefields, and then there are some
So was
others.
that originally privately owned, and then the university purchased in 2004 the property?
Yes.
What was the intent for, what was our hope? Do we have any idea of why we?
From what I can gather, so that we would have a footprint in the College Hill neighborhood, and we would kind of expand into that area, the purchase of that, and then later in the agenda, or the next item, were the cultural houses. And so we've had lengthy discussions on what is our role and what should we be doing. So this really comes out of a cost benefit analysis, and thought, well, maybe the best use of this is to sell it at this time. And so we do intend to put it out, hire a broker and put it out on the market. We've heard rumblings of interested parties, so it will be interesting.
Kind of a unique piece of property and can serve a lot of different purposes. There was a time when it was I don't know what it is now, but it was very active. There was a yogurt shop, there was a little store in there, the Subway, and it's the only commercial space in that Greek system without going down the hill to downtown Pullman. So I would think that it would be an attractive piece of property to
I
a
think it
private
will
party.
Yeah, and I think it will provide those types of services, and that they'll do an excellent job at it. So,
It
and
doesn't seem like an ideal location to be doing expansion for the university itself,
yeah.
or at least my experience of using.
I'm sure in the past that maybe it looked like that in to a previous administration, but as we tried to sort through that,
No, I get it.
we couldn't quite see that benefit, especially because now we've lived with it for a while, and we have the unfortunate situation where we're not earning income on it. If it were income producing property, perhaps you'd look at that differently, but it's just at this point, we think it's the best approach.
Not to rush us on, but
Okay.
I think, the next item is maybe requires a kind of more discussion, and then I want to be sure we have any discussion on the actual action item. So unless anybody else has any questions.
Yeah, so the next item is the cultural houses, and actually I would invite Mary Jo to speak. She has been my partner in this. Mine has been with Olivia as, boy, we've got these really high cost, high maintenance, really concerned about, things like retaining walls and things like that. So we were concerned from both the cost and maintenance standpoint, but we understood that they're cultural houses. So we wanted to be sure that we were partnering with student affairs as to what is the best disposition of these homes.
Yeah, I want to commend you guys for getting that and doing this work up front, because obviously it's complex, and to really dig in, and in our pre-meeting, I was really impressed with the way you thought it through, and the win-win that I think comes out of this.
Yeah, and Regent Redmond, we do know that we're going to have some individuals who will comment tomorrow in the public session. So I did want to give you a little bit of information to help out with that dialogue. This actually conversation started, I think, Stacy, when both and I started in 2017. And I really want to commend again, Ryan and his team. The Rebo office has been amazing helping us through this, but we've been evaluating the utilization of that property since I arrived. And what we discovered is that those buildings, as we purchased them, I'm sure were there for good intent, but because they were in such dilapidated states and frankly will require a significant amount of investment, we're looking about another couple million to be able to bring those properties up to par. We really had to decide where we want to invest and where we want to move forward with supporting our multicultural and heritage houses. There is significant damage, as you'll notice there. It will take about 1.5 million to get us back just up to stability, but then yet what does it look like moving forward? And so Jamie and her team have been been working with students, faculty, alumni to discuss the purpose of this. And the other thing you need to note about these facilities is that they are not ADA compliant. In fact, they are probably anti-ADA compliant, meaning they are just not accessible. Even the parking lot is not accessible because you have to go through an alleyway. So our students have not been utilizing them in the ways that would be beneficial or helpful to them. And so we wanted to make sure that as we look at that property and want to bring that back to campus, which was the overwhelming message from all of our colleagues, is that they really needed a space to connect, a space to engage, and a space to partner, but could not do it in the current facilities. And so you all have been to the amazing Elson Floyd Cultural Center. We knew that we had to bring some of those spaces back to support our students. And so when it's coming back, and I happen to be here when Talmadge Anderson House was before the education annex, and remember tripping up the stairs. So this house has a lot of history and connections. And so what we're going to do, propose to do, is to move it to Waller Hall, move all of those 4 cultural centers to Waller Hall, which are closer in proximity to the Elson Floyd Cultural Center, so that we can begin rethinking what that looks like and having our students really engage. Talmadge Anderson happened to be one of the Renaissance mans of WSU at the time that he was here. It's pretty impressive. And so I wanted to make sure that we honor, again, one of our African-American faculty members who did a very phenomenal thing for us. So as we move forward, the investment from the sale, the proceeds from the sale will be invested in these houses, or invested in the new properties or the new development that we're doing with these 4 houses. So it is not as if it's going to go to a central fund. It really is going to go back and designate and support the purposes of these 4 houses and the original intent of what they were planning to build.
And you'll see a theme there. Oh, pardon me. You'll see a theme there. These 2 were purchased in 2004. So I think it was that intended expansion.
And if I could, and Mary Jo, thank you. And Mary Jo has done a masterful job of working with our students on this, because this could have turned into a super hot button topic with our students of color, saying you're taking away our space for gathering as part of the campus community. So there's been multi-years to get us to this place so that we have student support, and it's really moving us ahead. Tomorrow during the open session, I don't know exactly who will be there, but the College Hill Association, we have communicated our intent to sell the houses with it's a neighborhood association. They do not agree with that decision. They think that we should make them historic homes and do some renovation work and some things like this. We thought about this carefully, and just know that not everybody in Pullman is going to agree with this particular decision. So just expect some pushback on this, but we have thought this through carefully. Our students are with us on this. It's the right thing for the university to do. And, the houses are going to go on the open market. I mean, it's just, we're not going to manipulate where they go or what we do with them. And, maybe somebody who wants to renovate some houses gets up there and says, hey, this is a cool project, but that's not what we want to be doing. Yeah, Mary Jo, did I misstate anything there? Okay.
Yeah, thank you all for the good work on this. It sounds like, again, the right thing for really everyone other than this particular neighborhood, who is, of course, nervous about the change, which we can understand and sympathize with. But in terms of serving our students and protecting the university and using our funding judiciously, this makes just a ton of sense. So great. All right, last item. So this is, Stacy, you are also covering this, and this is our action item for this session. And I think we had some technical problems last time, I think, when we went through this, and I think you guys spent some extra time with John Shetler going through this project, which much appreciated, John. But looks like it's well on track and very, very exciting.
Very exciting, yes. And your approval is for the schematic design. So just would ask if you would like us to go through the presentation. I know Mel is on, and he's going to want to say how excited he is, because this is really a big win for all of WSU to have this building funded and proceed ahead. So I guess I would ask my team, who wants to start?
Well, Jason has the screen share up.
Okay, good.
and Mel can,
Now, if you want to kick, everybody, I think, has seen the presentation pretty well. I don't need to go through every slide, but if we can, if you want to kind of kick it off, what it means to the campus, and then we can kind of roll from there.
So yeah, that sounds fine. I just wanted to add a couple of things since our last meeting. We've continued the design work, and I'll let my colleagues talk about that. Funding for the construction phase of the project was approved by the legislature in the just completed session for $52.6 million, and we are waiting for the governor's signature. But that is the main thing that has changed since we last met. And Regent Redmond, as you were discussing, we also had a really great opportunity to present the presentation and the briefing to both Regents Shetler and Schauer a couple of weeks ago, and their feedback was just terrific and really energized the team, and it was really nice to have their involvement in the project. And so with that, I'll turn it back to Jason.
Great. So I want to make sure everybody's seeing the right screen here. I got a different setup today. Are you seeing the screen of the project location?
Yeah.
Great. All right. So I'm just going to kind of skip through. I think most folks have seen this, and we're following the master plan that has been spoken to previously. Creating this building in this square end of the campus that's more of a science-oriented spot, with the engineering life science building, the ECS building and the Clark College building, and we're placing our new facility here, which closes the square engagement here. I'm going to skip ahead on some of these slides, and I guess make this more of an interaction. If you guys have questions, I don't want to skip over anything, but I don't want to work kind of at time to show what you guys would like to see. This shows the life science building and the connection to the campus main corridor. This pedestrian pathway, which is very important. Access on all three levels of the building will have ground level access. With the I'm just going to skip down to the floor plan. It shows that the top floor of the building is student engagement. It's all teaching, instructional labs. We have a section for collaboration of students, study spaces on this level, along with some office space. Second level down is research with office space, additional student study space or collaboration space. And the lowest level is your vivarium and your mechanical, electrical spaces that support everything above. Now you've seen we've tried to tie into the campus architecture of the space, matching that gable look that you see all over campus, with the brick and the metal panel roof. And then our front view of the building has more of that pavilion look, that lower level, which, as we showed previously, we've lowered the front of that building to improve the views, keep the view of from other buildings to the great scenery around the facility.
and we
Stop there and let others engage.
Yeah, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, I want to be respectful of the time. I think we're past our time, but we didn't want to cut off your direction or feedback.
Yeah. So we've all had these materials in our board books, so we probably don't need to go through a lot more slides. Why don't we just take questions at this point?
I'd like to make a comment if I could.
Please.
So this is a unique opportunity for a WSU. And the reason I state that is in the past, what we've done largely is if the state said it's 52 million, Olivia and her team they'd build a building for $52 million. Since we don't get the bite at the apple very often across the system, what we have decided to do is, in general, is put a $10 million fundraising goal on this and Mel, myself, the foundation, we've had this communication. We wanted to do a project for 62 or 65 million. And instead of saying it is the Vancouver fundraising team, which is relatively small, this is a university system project. So that means Kirk's got to be involved in the fundraising. Mel, Mike Connell, who's our acting CEO. It's a system project, not a Vancouver project. So that can all sound like semantics, but we've not done it this way before. And to me, I just want to keep doing this. Is the state investment should be seen as that's going to get our base. We need to use philanthropy to move us to the structure and the thing that we really want. So we've had really good conversations about this. Everybody's on the same page, but this also represents a little difference for us. The second thing I'll say is in the past, we had not had, with a couple exceptions, major gifts for capital. They were kind of one-offs, but what we've seen with intercollegiate athletics, we'll announce another 2 gifts that are multi-million dollars to support facilities enhancements. And what that does is people are now watching what other people are doing. So one of the gifts said, for example, for intercollegiate athletics, we want to be the biggest that somebody has done. What is that number? And we said, here's what it is. And they said, well, we're going to go back and we may bump ours so that we're now the largest. You say, well, this is juvenile. But what I'm saying is our donors now are getting used to the idea they are not going to get everything that WSU wants from the state. So philanthropy is going to have to be part of our capital planning. So this may seem like a small thing, but it's the step we need to take. It's a step I'm personally committed to go out there, engage with folks, and we'll be successful. But it's going to feel a little risky at times because you say, do you know where that 10 million is going to come from today? The answer is no, but we have a plan, and we're going to go execute that plan. Mel, is that fair?
100%.
I'll put my mask back on now. Thank you.
And it also suggests to me, in terms of the communications that we do with the Regents, that this is a great opportunity to involve Regents. And if we can include in the things that you're sending out, I don't know if it's you or the fundraising folks, but something that goes to the Regents on a regular basis. Here is the philanthropic opportunity that we are currently looking to fund for in association with this particular facility or whatever it is, because we know people and we talk to people all the time, and these are really great opportunities for someone who's got extra capital lying around and are just looking for the right opportunity to deploy it. So I'd love for us to be more involved in that.
That will start being in my Friday updates that I do, is
Cool.
putting that, but it's baked enough so there's something there, and you don't go, Kirk, I know somebody interested. We go, well, we really don't kind of know. We're now working on that, so that will be part of that. So.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Oh, great update. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Got a lot done. All right. So the meeting has now concluded, and we will be taking a break until 10:30 to rejoin additional committee meetings. And the YouTube link for the subsequent committee meetings can be found on the WSU Board of Regents website for those for tuning in. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.